5 months ago, Hyundai released this, the 2026 Ioniq 9. This is their 3-row all-electric SUV, and it gets over 300 miles of EPA estimated range thanks to its 110 kilowatt-hour battery pack, their biggest ever. This is the most expensive version of the Ioniq 9. This car stickers for over $70,000, closing in on $80,000. So sit back, relax, and let's talk Ioniq 9. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name's Corbin. I cover all things Ioniq related. I own an Ioniq 5 and an Ioniq 6. Well, I lease them, but I drive both of those cars. So I have a lot of experience with the Ioniq lineup. So when I got the opportunity to drive the Ioniq 9, I was super excited. So yeah, this is the Ioniq 9, a monstrous car. It is huge. I'm not used to driving big cars. The only other really big car I've ever driven was when I reviewed the EV9 a couple years ago. And speaking of EV9, this is basically Hyundai's answer to that car. Now, there's a lot that's similar between the two cars, but they are also very different vehicles. This has a bigger battery, which means more range. This has more power. This car is overall longer and it has more cargo capacity. They also look completely different. I know from a lot of the comments I see, people really do tend to like the styling of the EV9 more. It's a little more boxy. This is a little bit more kind of curvy and flowing. I like the angularness, the aggressiveness of the EV9. But if we're talking about performance, I definitely prefer the Ioniq 9. This is much more powerful. But this being the high performance version of the Ioniq 9, this has 422 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. And for a big car of this size, this thing flies. The great thing about the Ioniq 9 is that every single version of it has over 300 miles of EPA rated range. And having that 110.3 kilowatt hour battery pack means that this thing is going to go much further on a charge, probably around 25 miles further versus the EV9 with its 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. Unlike the EV9 though, the Ioniq 9 is only available in one battery size. The EV9 is available in a 100 kilowatt hour and a smaller, I believe, 81 kilowatt hour or so. I'll put it on screen right now. I don't remember off the top of my head. So this car with all-wheel drive, the high performance motors, this still gets 311 miles of range in mixed driving. Now, if we take that number 2.7 and multiply it by the usable battery capacity of this car, which is closer to 100 kilowatt hours, maybe 101, 102, that gives me a range of about 270, 275 miles, which is quite good. With my Ioniq 5 all-wheel drive, I can do about 250 or so when mostly highway driving. And when it comes to charging, this car has it in spades. So with that big 110 kilowatt hour battery pack, if you plug into a Electrify America, Ioniq, Mercedes-Benz high power charger that can deliver full charging power to this car, it will go from 10 to 80% in just 24 minutes. Now, because this car does come natively with a NACS North American Charging Standard charge port, you can go to any Tesla supercharger as well. And if you do that, you are gonna be limited because the Tesla superchargers, as they stand today, only output 400 volts or so. This is a high voltage car, so it uses the rear motor to boost the voltage going into the battery pack. So that will take about 40 minutes to go 10 to 80%. So not as ideal. I wouldn't go out of my way to use a Tesla supercharger, but you do have that as an option if it's more convenient. The Ioniq 9 does also have an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. So if you do want to level 2 charge this from 10 to 80%, it'll be 9 hours and 40 minutes or so. So the Ioniq 9 does have one of these fancy motorized charging port doors. I'm kind of over this trend. We've seen with Kia EV3, EV4, Kia is transitioning to basically manually operated doors. I'm all for that. It's just one more thing to break. I did have some issues with the electric door on my Ioniq 6 last winter, so honestly, I'd rather just have it be completely manual, but this one does open pretty quickly. It's a lot faster than some of those GM charge port doors, and it opens very smoothly. It's not all kind of jittery. Now, kind of in the same vein, the Ioniq 9 has these motorized door handles. They just pop out. They're very similar to the EV9. There's a nice LED light that goes around it, and it looks pretty good at night. I'm just over this trend. These work well. I'm not going to say they don't work well, but again, it's just one more thing to potentially break. So again, the car I've been driving for the last week, calligraphy design, performance. The exterior color is Gravity Gold Matte, which is available on the Ioniq 5 and I think the Ioniq 6 as well. And then the interior here is the gray on gray. Also looks nice. You guys know I prefer light colored interiors. The car comes with these massive 21-inch wheels. This design is exclusive to the Calligraphy design trim. It's using Hankook Ion Evo AS. They seem to be good EV tires. I haven't noticed a whole lot of tire noise coming from them in the week of driving I've done. This car does have a ton of insulation to keep noises and rattles and wind and road noise out. It also does have active noise cancellation, so kind of like your noise canceling headphones, it will cancel out any of those frequencies that the microphones pick up, so that is nice as well. Now, some of you may remember a few years ago, Hyundai revealed the 7 concept, which this car is based on. This car was originally called the Ioniq 7, but late in its development, they decided to call it the Ioniq 9. But they did stay very true to the concept car, which Hyundai does tend to do. You never really see too many significant changes. It has this really strong hip line here over the rear fender. Has a very squared off tailgate, which leads to big interior cargo volume. The doors on this car, absolutely massive, and they open quite wide. So if you're loading in car seats in here, it's quite easy. So basically, simple as popping that into place. And then with this specific seat, you push this orange button, clamp that in, do the same thing over here. Snug it down, kick this thing out, boom. What was that, like 30 seconds? This nice big door opening gives you plenty of room to maneuver this thing in. If you get a lower spec version of the Ioniq 9, you can get a bench seat in the middle. Something I harp on all the time that I really miss from my Mazda CX-5 that isn't there on the Ioniq 5 is the doors going all the way down past the door sills, so that when you are walking up to the car and getting in, you're not going to get a bunch of crap on your pant legs. I'm not sure this implementation is super effective though. You can see a bunch of water up there. It does look like the gasket is actually, yeah, it's built into the door sill as opposed to the door. So I'm not sure. Kind of confused why there's a bunch of water up here. Something Hyundai's designers harped on at the launch of this was that they kind of used the traditional Korean outfit, I believe it's called a hanbok, for the styling, kind of the creases here. That was some of their inspiration. Something that happens on the lower versions of the Ioniq 9 is this section right here gets blacked out with a black insert. Some people really hate that look. I think it does look kind of cool and it's very distinctive on those lower trims. I think I actually like it less when it's body colored to match the car, but that's just me. You do get roof rails, so if you want to put a rack on the car, that should be pretty easy. Overall dimensions of the car, wheelbase 123.2 inches, overall length 199.2, width 78, and overall height 70.5. And the minimum ground clearance is 6.9 inches. So it's got decent ground clearance. Word is on the street that there is going to be an XRT version of the Ioniq 9 coming out in the near future. So just like the Ioniq 5, you'll be able to do a little bit more off-roading. It'll probably come with more off-road focused tires and suspension, and probably a trailer hitch from the factory. I like what they've done with the Ioniq 9 badging here in the back, how it's spelled out right across. The emblem is basically completely hidden. It is behind the glass here, so it's very faint. So people don't really look at this and think, oh, that's definitely a Hyundai. You might be asking yourself, where's the rear windshield wiper? Well, Hyundai learned their lesson with the Ioniq 5, how they ditched that when that car first came out. They added it for the 2025 model year. And for the Ioniq 9, they did an excellent job of hiding it up under the spoiler here, so you don't see it at all until you actually need it. I think that's a great implementation. I hope for the redesigned Ioniq 5 they do something similar instead of having it just kind of bolted onto the back windshield. Something that actually really bugs me about these lights is that these two here are so much wider than the rest of them. I don't quite understand why they wouldn't have just made it one clean row of single wide pixels, and then for your turn signals, have the amber lights this same size all the way up to the top. For me, these two right here really take away from the overall styling of the lighting. Let me know what you guys think down below. I think for me personally, the front end styling of the Ioniq 9 is my favorite part of the car. I love the LED light bar that goes across the middle. I love these kind of extra pixels on the side, and the vertical LED lighting looks really cool in my opinion. This insert in the middle doesn't illuminate or anything. I have noticed that it has been full of condensation basically the entire week I've had it. And I looked on some of the forums and Reddit, and it seems like this is a pretty common issue with the car. I don't know if it's a design defect or if it's a manufacturing defect, but it seems like there's condensation issues. It looks pretty bad when it's just always full of condensation. But behind here is your front radar sensor, front camera for your parking camera system. And what's cool with the LED light strip is there are some interesting animations that it can do. So you can choose them in the car's head unit, how you want them to illuminate when you approach the car or when you lock the car. Very similar to EV9. I did a video on those a few years ago. Now, being a big SUV, it does have a pretty big front end. And what that leads to is actually the most useful front trunk of any Ioniq to date. So on the key fob, it's really nice. You can hold down this button and you can remotely open the front trunk. There's no switch or anything that you have to pull to get it open. You just lift it straight up and it opens. And as you can see, a decent amount of front trunk space. So you can put all your charging adapters, all that kind of emergency junk that you would usually have in the trunk. You can just throw it under here. Because it is so large, they did have to put an emergency escape switch. So if a newborn baby gets locked in here and can figure out that flap, then I guess it's going to be able to get out. Everything else under here is shrouded in plastic. So here's where you would recharge your AC. Here is the coolant reservoir. The only other really accessible one is windshield washer fluid right there. And then this one over on the driver's side looks like brake fluid. Super easy to change your cabin air filter. Basically, pull that down, pop this open, and boom. There's your cabin air filter. You can replace that at your leisure. All Ioniq 9s do come with a level 1, level 2 home charger. You can see it does have a NAX cable on it. So you have different adapters. So this one would be for charging on a normal 15 amp or 20 amp circuit. And this is where you would plug that in. So kind of nice that they provide that with the new car. Of course, the car does have automatic folding side view mirrors. That's not going to be on every trim, but here on the calligraphy design, you do have that. Let's take a look at the cargo area. The button is actually really difficult to find. It's under the queue. Over here on the right, push that. And it will open up. Opens up very tall, so I'm 6'2", and you can see I can safely walk under this, albeit just barely, but I can get under here without hitting my head. So here's what cargo space looks like with the third row up. You do have a 12 volt, 180 amp outlet right here, a button here that you can use if you're like camping in the back to shut the cargo door. Over on the passenger side, you do have a 15 amp vehicle to load outlet. You do have on the calligraphy design, and I believe the limited trim, the electric seat releases, so they will fold down. I'll show you that in a second. And then over here is your emergency charging cable release. So if your charger does get stuck in the charging port for whatever reason, you can pull this little purple little wire here and it will release and you can pull that out so you can be on your way. You do have some cargo tie downs. Under the cargo floor, you do have a little bit more storage. Here's where the tire mobility kit, because this car does not come with a full-size spare tire. Underneath this false floor here is where you would install the automatic door locker that I sell on ioniqguy.com. Very easy to install on Ioniq 9. It's basically plug and play. You could install it in under 5 minutes. And then when you shut all the doors on the car, the doors will automatically lock. 10 seconds later, that's not a function that the car has natively, so you do have to install something aftermarket, but it does work very reliably and it won't lock your keys in the car. So let's go ahead, fold down the third row seats so you can see what it looks like when those go down. Hit both of those buttons, automatically start folding, the headrest pop down automatically, and you get a nice big flat load floor. This is a ton of space back here. I personally would never really use the third row, so I'd probably always have these down, and you can fit a lot of groceries in here. Now we can fold down the second row by pushing those two buttons. That seat's moving backwards to give itself a little bit more room for folding. Maybe? Maybe not. Okay, so it had to fold. Okay, so it had to move backwards, and then you had to press it again in order for it to fold itself down. And there you can see tons of cargo space. Let me actually crawl in here just so you can see how much space there is. So again, I am 6'2". I can almost sit up. I do have to arch my back a little bit, but if I lay down, if you wanted to put a mattress in here or something, you could comfortably camp in here. You've got the nice panoramic glass roof where you can see the stars. You put this thing in utility mode and run the air conditioning or heating at night if you need to. And this would be a pretty nice place to spend the night. So let's try and fold everything up in one fell swoop. I'll use all 4 fingers. Push all of them at the same time. Missed that one. And just like that, everything goes right back into its upright position. That is really cool. Then you can pop these back up. I'm gonna go in the third row in a minute, so we'll set those to where they need to be. That's about it for the cargo space. But now that we've talked about the exterior cargo capacity, the front trunk, let's go into the front seat and check that out. So opening up the driver door, opens nice and wide. I really like the interior design of the Ioniq 9. I think they did a really nice job. I'm partial to this interior color because it's very similar to the Ioniq 5 with kind of the tealish kind of green color for the upper and then the lighter gray insert on the lower portion of the door. You've got big door pockets which can accommodate pretty decently sized water bottles. 2-person seat memory. This car does have massage seats, all your typical window switches and everything. There is some LED accent lighting behind the door pull area right here. You can see we do have the Bose sound system here. The driver's seat does have many functions. So you have your normal forward, reverse, up, down, seat tilt, 4-way lumbar, so forward, backward, up, down. This switch here is for adjusting the side bolsters, which are air bladders that will fill and then deflate if you don't want them as narrow. I find that to be a really nice feature. Then you do have a kind of calf rest, which will pop out. When you move this up and down, it raises and lowers the inner section of the lower seat cushion. And then this button is for going into relaxation mode. Pretty neat. The passenger seat has almost the same number of adjustments as the driver's seat, sans the adjustable side bolsters as well as the relaxation seat mode. There's no button for that. I really like the seat design. I kind of like this ribbed kind of section on the inner here. You do have some pixels embroidered into that center stripe. The bottom section here is perforated because this has ventilated seats as well as heated seats. Being a taller guy, I have gotten really used to in the past week just easily getting in and out of this car. I'm really starting to realize why people like these big cars, especially bigger people. They're just so comfortable. I've been able to find a very comfortable driving position. The steering wheel is very nice. It feels a little bit larger. There's not a whole lot of bolstering here at the 2 and 10 position. So if you like a chunky steering wheel, you're probably not gonna like it. But this is a cruising car. This is a family car. A lot of people are probably gonna be sitting down here at 4 and 6. This is usually how I drive. But it's a nice feeling steering wheel. I kinda like the two-tone color scheme they got going on here. The buttons are all really nice. They're not capacitive or touch sensitive or anything. They're all actually physical buttons that you push in, which I'm a big fan of. What I'm not so big of a fan of though is the driver facing attention warning system. I personally don't have any issues with this. It's an IR camera that watches your eyes and makes sure you're watching the road, but many people will attest this system does not work. Even people driving without prescription sunglasses or polarized glasses have issues with it seeing their eyes. And it disables highway drive assist, which is totally unacceptable at this point. They need to issue some sort of update to fix it. People are livid over it. So for that reason alone, that people are having issues with it, I don't like it, even though I haven't had problems with it. So Hyundai, please fix that. Just like pretty much all of Hyundai's other vehicles, you do have a little steel pad here that you can attach magnets to. So here I have my magnetic eyewear holder where you can keep your glasses when you don't need them. I did very recently redesign it. So you can see now I have my Ray-Ban Wayfarers on there, which are pretty flat, but a lot of people use wraparound glasses that have a really big curve. So I redesigned it so that it has a little plastic insert here that you can remove if you want to use a more wraparound style glasses. You can still use it with any other glasses, but the arms go at a lower angle, so they're more likely to pop open. But yeah, you can check those out on my website at ioniqguy.com if you are interested. On the upper trims of the car, you do get a head-up display, which displays all your driving information, media, turn-by-turn navigations. Turn-by-turn navigation works really well. If you do use polarized glasses, it can dim the brightness a little bit, so just be aware of that. Illuminated pixels here in the center, which show you your drive mode or your state of charge if you're charging. All sorts of cool stuff. We have an electric adjustable steering column. Over here, we've got a button to open the charge port door, pop the frunk, open the rear hatch, traction control off, lighting, brightness, electric parking brake. You do have your shifter and power button here on the stalk located near your right knee. I actually do like this. I like that the start-stop button no longer takes up space on the center console or dashboard. It's right there intuitively where your hand is going to go to shift the car. So I like it there. I do like the new design of the shifter, how it's more square instead of round like in the Ioniq 5. If you guys watch the channel regularly, you know I'm a big fan of buttons and physical switches. I'm not crazy about the implementation here in the Ioniq 9 because most of the climate functions here are still basically a touchscreen. So you do have driver only, you can turn on the ventilated seats. I appreciate that they give me a button that's always in place for heated seats and ventilated seats as opposed to burying them into the climate menu like it used to be in the Ioniq 5. It's just kind of tough to read sometimes depending on the sun's position, the brightness outside. But regardless, I will always prefer having a specific place where all these controls just live. I do find these buttons a little bit difficult to navigate in the dark. The words themselves illuminate, but the buttons themselves don't. So when you're just kind of trying to peck real quick in the dark and not take your eyes off the road for very long, I do find it kind of difficult to hit what I want. But if I were to live with this car, I'm sure it's something I would get used to. The Ioniq 9 is the first Hyundai to feature 100-watt USB-C charging ports. You can charge a laptop in the car from these, which is nice. You don't have to rely on a vehicle to load port in the car with a big charging block. Then you do have a standard 12-volt outlet there. You do have a couple shelves here for some storage. They do have pretty sticky rubber mats, so they do hold things in place. This one down here, very deep, but it's difficult to access. You can move the center console forward and aft here in the Ioniq 9. Not all trims do that. So you do get a little bit more access. I don't know what I would ever store in there, but that's just me personally. I'm sure people who have kids and families could always use more storage space for snacks and toys and binkies and all that kind of stuff. Moving on to the center console itself, fingerprint scanner for logging into the car for your driver settings, auto hold switch. This is a toggle for changing your drive modes. This is hill descent control, so if you want the car to kind of automatically brake itself going down a steep hill, you can hit that button and it will modulate the braking for you. Parking camera, you can see here that pulls that up. You can do the 360-degree view where you can just kind of rotate around the car. It does show you the wheel angle too, which is pretty cool. You can look out the front, look out the back, kind of look top down. You can look down the sides of the car. I will say, over the last few years, the way they stitch the various camera angles together has gotten really good. If you don't have something really close to the side of the car and you're just kind of looking at an open space like this, it's pretty impressive how good it looks. The next thing we're going to talk about is these cup holders. Wow. I'm going to say these are the best cup holders I have ever seen in a car. You can see here I have like a relatively small water bottle. It's, I believe, 32 ounces, but it's tall and narrow. So you put that in, it holds it really well. If you put a big water bottle in here, which kind of takes up the entire width of this, it also accommodates it, holds it really well. So I really commend Hyundai for spending the time to make my favorite cup holders ever in a Hyundai. We do have a Qi wireless charging pad here. I'm not sure what the wattage of this is. I presume it's probably 15 watts max. Overheat. I am using an iPhone 17 Pro, so that phone does have pretty good cooling and heat dissipation compared to some older iPhones, but this has been pretty good so far. Moving on to the armrest, it is kind of cool. It opens in this direction as well as this direction. Haven't seen that in too many cars, but very large. You have this pull-out tray, and then you can go down into this hole even deeper. I've got the charging adapters in there right now, and this whole thing pulls out from the back, which I'll show you when I get into the second row, but then you have some even more space in the front that kind of just disappears under this section here. So lots of storage in there if you do need it. And it does have a little LED light, which is nice. On the passenger seat, you can use these buttons here to move it forward and backward and tilt it if you need some more space for a passenger back there. I think Hyundai has learned their lesson about putting silver painted pieces around these bezels on the screens, which then reflect onto the windshield. This one's black. I haven't noticed any issues with reflections on the screen, so that's nice. We do have the digital rear view mirror here, which I've grown to become a big fan of. Now I have it in my 2025 Ioniq 5. I'm fully on board with this. It removes all the obstructions from the headrests or the C and D pillars, so you can have an unobstructed view out of the back of the car. Got home link buttons. You can adjust some of the settings here for the digital rear view mirror. The only real annoying thing about it, and it's not anything Hyundai can fix, it's just the way cameras work, is that different cars with LED headlights, they are flashing at a different frequency than the camera is refreshing the screen or the shutter speed of the camera. So a lot of the time when you're driving, cars' headlights will look like they're flashing at you, when in reality, if you look out the side mirror, they're not. But that's not anything Hyundai can fix. And at night, they do have kind of a starburst effect, so it can be a little distracting. So sometimes at night, I will flip it into manual mode just to look out. Something that did take me a minute to get used to was the shape of the side mirrors. They're almost triangular, and at first I was very surprised by that. I found it kind of annoying. I've gotten used to it over the last few days, but it's still not my favorite just shape for a side view mirror. You can see everything you need to, but it's just odd that they had to clip out that top left corner. Not super big on that. I do love having these little corner windows here. You can kind of see almost through the A-pillar of the car. Visibility in general in the Ioniq 9 is great. You have big, tall windows, lots of glass. Really no complaints except when you have the third row headrests in that up position. It does make seeing out the back a little bit more difficult, but that's why we have the digital rear view mirror. The sound system is pretty good. It's definitely better than my Ioniq 5. I forget how many speakers this has. I'll put it on screen right now. But it does sound decent. For an $80,000 car though, I don't think it sounds that good. For $80,000, I think they could have done better, but I understand they're trying to keep costs down, so not putting in the most premium sound system is probably one of those spots where they're trying to cut cost. I'm not gonna go deep into software. I've done a bunch of videos on the software here, which is called CCNC, or Connected Car Navigation Cockpit. This car has the latest version, and it does have a lot of EV features that even my 2025 Ioniq 5 on CCNC doesn't have. So when you go to this page, you can look at this screen, battery usage statistics. I'm still trying to understand exactly all the information it's trying to tell me. and you also have battery health, which is not in the Ioniq 5. But this tells me that the battery is at 99% of its original capacity after 5,614 miles, which is what I would expect to see. You usually see the biggest drop off in battery health in the first 10, 20,000 miles of the car. And we also do have real-time charging information here. So when you are DC fast charging, this will tell you what the charger is able to output, what the car is requesting, so you can kind of determine if the charger is the issue or if the car is the issue in terms of not getting full charging power. This really does need to be added to the Ioniq 5 and the Kona Electric. I think this is a really nice feature. This did not come in the latest October software update for the Ioniq 5, so kind of bummed about that. If you want a real deep dive, I have an almost hour-long video where I go over everything in this system, all the settings and everything. That was shot in my Ioniq 5, so it might be a little bit different than here in the Ioniq 9, but all the basics should still apply. I do also really like how both screens kind of curve in towards the driver. There's also some ambient lighting that will shine underneath the kind of floating screens, which looks really nice. Moving over here to the dashboard finish. This is something I'm kind of mixed on. To me, it kind of looks like they blended like cement. And you know the Wrigley bubblegum wrappers, the kind of silver stuff? It kind of looks like that too. It kind of looks like they applied it to cement or something. I think it looks fine. I don't think it looks fantastic. I think I prefer the fake kind of wood trim on the lower spec Ioniq 9s. I could live with this look, but it's definitely not for everyone. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. You do have another little shelf with a rubber mat. You could store some stuff right there. And here is the glove box. I like the switch for pulling it open. You just pull it towards you and it pops down. Really big glove box, really deep. I'm almost halfway up my arm. It's got to be at least 10 inches, maybe 11 inches deep. So you could fit a lot of stuff in there. And then you've got the same overhead console found in the Ioniq 5. So you've got some lighting up here, and you can control the panoramic glass roof sunshade. And what's really unique about it is you can vent it, or you can even open it. Not something that's very common in a 3-row SUV, so I think Hyundai really did a nice job with this roof in this car. We do have a suede headliner in this version of the Ioniq 9. Looks like there's some schmutz up here. I've seen some photos where it looks really bad because if you push the suede in a certain direction, it just kind of shows where anybody's ever touched it, which I think looks pretty bad. This car with the light interior, I think, does a good job of hiding that if there is any going on, but it's not something that I'm super crazy about. I would just take whatever cheap material they want to put up there. I don't know who's ever touching their headliner enough to warrant making it suede. You've got big sunshades, big mirror with automatic illuminating light, which is a nice touch. Because this car is tri-zone climate, you do have a switch here where you can switch between front and rear, so you can control the backseat airflow if your kids are fighting over it or something. Really nice big footwells, so you can really sit back and relax on a long drive. So that's about it for the front seats. Let's move into the second row. So as I mentioned, really big doors, makes it really easy to get in and out. You do have a couple different size cup holders here. You do have window shades if you want to block the light from your little ones. And they do cover up almost the entire window. Another big door pocket with this kind of cool translucent plastic. Looks nice, flexible, shouldn't break. Same two-tone seats here as the front, all electrically actuated. And even the second row passengers do get the fold-out leg rest. Let's see how comfortable I can get in this second row seat. So first things first, I'm gonna move this seat forward a little bit so I can put out the leg rest. This is where this switch comes in really handy. I'm gonna put it all the way forward because I got long legs. And then kind of rotate this, push it back, put the leg rest out. Oh, wow. The headrests in the second row are even better than in the front row. Yeah, I think I would fall asleep back here pretty easily. Got a nice air vent right here pointing right at me, so that's nice. Grab handle. And then I got a nice view out the roof of the car. Here in the second row, I've got tons of space underneath that seat for my feet, so I could be really comfortable back here. Let's go ahead and shut the door. The doors on this car shut with a very reassuring thud. They sound really nice and tight. You get a seat back pocket, which is their stupid hard style, which I don't really like. If you put something soft in there, it's probably gonna crush it a little bit. On the back of each front seat are more 100-watt USB-C ports. That's really great. On the back of the center console is where you would control your air for the second row. And being the most expensive version of the Ioniq 9, second row gets ventilated and heated seats. You can pull this out and have access to that same storage that you can access from under the lid. This would be really neat if it was able to be refrigerated. So you've probably noticed kind of the design motif on the interior here is ovals and circles. You can see the big oval here going around to the front. Circular door pulls. I think we see something very similar on the new Hyundai Palisade as well, but I think it looks really nice. You do have privacy glass on the second and third row, and when you do put the window down, it does go down fully, so you can put your arm up here. Now, if you don't feel like going into that center section, you can just push this button on the top of the second row seat, and it will make a nice gap for you to kind of climb in through the back. And then you can just step on in. And once you're in place, hit that button again, and the seat will move back, pinning you in place forever. Press it again when you need it to stop so it doesn't completely crush your knees. Over here, more 100-watt USB-C ports. Using these two switches, you can tilt the third row seats, which is very nice. You can actually recline pretty far back. A couple more decent sized cup holders. There's a spot here where you can clip the seatbelt if you don't want that to potentially rattle around. Same things on the driver's side of the car. Air vents, dome light. These third row headrests are not as soft and supple as these pillow-like second row. So your third row passengers aren't going to be as happy as your second row passengers, but I think that's to be expected. The windows here for the third row are massive. I don't feel claustrophobic back here at all. I've been in some cars where the window is much smaller and have felt kind of sick, just feeling like you can't see out or anything. So these are really nice. Again, visibility throughout the entire cabin is fantastic. So yeah, the third row isn't too bad. It's definitely only meant for two people, even two children. There's only two seat belts back here, so you really don't want to stick a third kid back here. That would technically be illegal. But overall, it's usable. The second row is obviously going to be the place to be, especially with these captain's chairs. With the bench seat, you could obviously squeeze a smaller person in the center section, especially because we have an entirely flat floor here. So there's no drive tunnel or anything. It's just a nice big flat surface, so plenty of room for feet. Now, in terms of driving the Ioniq 9, I really don't have a whole lot to say. It drives like a modern EV. It's quick, it's quiet, it handles pretty well for a big car. It rides very big. It does not feel like a small car. I find the difference between driving an EV9 and the Ioniq 9 fairly different because the EV9 is a slightly smaller car, but it feels smaller on the road. Highway Drive Assist 2, just like with my 2025 Ioniq 5, works really well. It's not torque based anymore, so you don't have to actually physically twist the steering wheel to let it know that you have your hands on it. It's capacitive. You literally just have to rest a couple fingers, maybe even one finger on it to let it know that you have a grip on the steering wheel. It works well. I find that when you do a passing maneuver or somebody gets out of your way, it goes back up to your set speed very quickly. My first Ioniq 5 wasn't nearly as responsive. The new 2025 and this car both feel very responsive, so I do like that. It's a family car. You're not going to be ripping this thing around turns. You're not going to be taking it to the track. Sure, in a straight line, it's got plenty of power and does 0 to 60 in like 4.9 seconds or something. One pedal driving tuning is really good in this car. No complaints there. The paddle shifters on the back of the steering wheel are one of my favorite features of Hyundai's EVs. You can switch between no regen at all and you basically just coast, all the way to one pedal driving, where as you slowly lift your foot off the accelerator pedal, it comes to a complete stop. If you pull and hold on the right paddle, it puts the car into auto regen mode, so it'll try to maintain a reasonable gap between you and the car in front of it and slow down as needed. It will not come to a full stop though, which is why I personally drive my cars in iPedal most of the time. Now, this being a Hyundai EV, I have to mention ICCU issues. So same as with my 2025 Ioniq 5, there still seems to be failing ICCUs with that car, and I have seen at least a handful of Ioniq 9s that have had ICCU failures. So the problem is still there. I don't know how this is still happening 3 years later. I don't know why this hasn't been resolved yet. Just boggles the mind. If you don't know what the ICCU issue is, these cars have been having a major component that's used for charging the 12-volt battery as well as level 2 home charging that will just fail. And when it fails, it's no longer able to charge the 12-volt battery, which means you're not able to run the car anymore. So if your ICCU dies, but you have a full 12-volt battery, it'll run for a few hours before the 12-volt battery's dead. And then if you're out driving, the car will basically just power down on whatever road you're on. So it's really not an ideal situation. I will say Hyundai has made the replacement times significantly quicker than they used to be. They are covered by the 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. So as many times as they fail, Hyundai's on the books to replace it free of charge for you. That doesn't mean it's going to be a massive inconvenience. And I just am so sick of talking about this problem, Hyundai. These cars are fantastic, but this is the Achilles heel of them. And it just makes it difficult sometimes to say, yeah, go out and buy one of these cars, even though one of its major components might fail in 10,000 miles, 50,000 miles. And if you're beyond 100,000 miles or 10 years, then you're on the hook for replacing it. So I just had to put that warning out there. It does seem like Ioniq 9 does have potential for ICCU failures, just like all of Hyundai and Kia's other cars. To what extent ICCUs are failing with Ioniq 9, I have no idea. We're never going to know. Hyundai is never going to put that information out in the world. So it's all just speculative based on posts on Reddit, on forums, on Facebook groups. That's kind of all we can go by. I've done a survey in the past with Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6 and EV6 owners that made it seem like around 10% of cars were failing, but I don't know if there was bias in that survey, so it's hard to say. But yeah, what I think Hyundai has done here is a very compelling alternative to the Kia EV9. This car is selling about just as well as EV9. It's still not selling as well as I thought it was going to be, and now that the federal tax credit is gone, I don't know how that's going to affect sales. They've only sold a few thousand of these since June of 2025. Compared to Ioniq 5 sales, they are a drop in the bucket. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts after driving the Ioniq 9 for a week. Really like this car. Will I ever get one? I'm kind of on the fence. The Ioniq 6 lease ends in April, and we are going to need a second car, so I'm trying to figure out what the next move is going to be. It's really way more car than I need, but in terms of just overall comfort for me being a bigger guy, I do find the seating position and just the space in here to be a little bit more comfortable than the Ioniq 5 for me. But again, we will see. Anything's on the table come next April. If you like the idea of a high voltage, fast charging electric car and you need the space that this car offers, I can safely say this is probably the car you're going to want to get. Obviously, do your own due diligence, cross-shop with the Kia EV9. You could even cross-shop this against the Lucid Gravity. That's kind of in the same price range. That's also high voltage, very efficient, fast charging. So I think, yeah, definitely take a look at that. Overall, I really like the package. Everything on the inside feels very familiar for somebody driving an Ioniq 5 already. So I like that I can just get in this car and feel at home. I kind of know what to expect. Now I just need a couple kids to put in those back seats. But honestly, it's kind of a toss-up for me whether I would go Ioniq 9 or Kia EV9. Like I mentioned earlier, I do think I prefer the EV9 styling over the Ioniq 9 styling, but I do like that this does have a bigger battery and overall more road trip range. But I definitely do prefer the interior of the Ioniq 9 to that of the EV9. So if I could somehow Frankenstein those two cars together, I think that's probably the car that I would choose. But if you're interested, be sure to check out your local Hyundai dealer, do a test drive. If you own an Ioniq 9 or are looking for some accessories, be sure to check out my website, ioniqguy.com. The automatic door locker works with Ioniq 9. I've got my magnetic eyewear holders, some cup holder enlargers for the second and third row, and of course the charging adapter holder for the trunk area to prevent your adapters from rolling around and getting dirty. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.